Yo, what is up, everybody? It's Wurtz's take on Flammamoth. Flammamoth. It's now, you've probably seen a bunch of Flammamoth videos come out recently between Dymax, who then called me out, so they bet I'll make a Flammamoth video, to the point where then MBT made his Flammamoth video before I could make this video. But this is my take. It's a little bit different than kind of their takes on it, without doing what Dymax called me out for, which is Apple Rise From. Hey, I'm sorry, I like this card. It's dope. Anywho, we're playing Flammamoth today, and it's a pretty interesting deck to build because I have some issues with Flammamoth. Now, Flammamoth is a great card. So on its surface, it's 9/4 for 2 wind and a fire. This Flammamoth gets 1 attack for every enchanting wind on the field, which means it gets pretty big. It's an 11 attacker on its own, and when a player activates a rune effect, you can expend 2 fire to negate and destroy that rune. This card can only be activated once each turn. That is pretty significant. That's pretty powerful. It means you can attack into shields and negate the shield after your opponent burns all their spirits for it. You can negate a PTA activation on end step when they try to blow up your Flammamoth with their expend. You can negate a Divine Rune activation. You can negate a Divine Rune cat. It does so much to just stop runes, which is what the card's trying to do, which sounds insanely powerful. There are some flaws with Flammamoth, which we'll go over shortly. The rest of the deck, though, was pretty important, so let's go into it. Ash Rabbit, we all know it. Play it, search 3. We're playing a bit of a combo deck, so we need the Ash Rabbit. Playing Arrow here because one of the Flammamoth's biggest weakness is Boombat, Kinleo, and other Elestral focused removal. Arrow, if you send over into a Flammamoth, will stop your opponent from targeting with Boombats and Kinleo, stuff like that, to help mitigate some of the possible outs your opponent has to Flammamoth. We're playing 3 Toxic Swarm, and this is where you kind of see the direction the deck is going. We are playing Wind Nexus with Flammamoth as kind of a capstone build around, because in my testing, I've played quite a few games of Flammamoth this week. I'm only going to show you guys one. Flammamoth doesn't win you the game. Flammamoth just gives you a really advantageous position that your opponent has trouble outing. And what I mean by that is generally your opponent's going to keep dropping defense dudes in front of Flammamoth. You can't get over it with Flammamoth, or rather you get over with Flammamoth, but you don't do damage because they go Ash Rabbit defense, Foamy defense, Drotagwa defense, Quackle defense. So all you're doing is just every turn turning Flammamoth into an Earthquake, which is still good. However, because that Earthquake you're paying like 4 for because you're playing the fire expending, it's hard to close out a game with Flammamoth, so we're running the Wind Nexus package. So once we establish a Flammamoth, we can do something else. Or, while we're just playing our Wind Nexus deck, we have the ability, if we get ahead, to just drop a Flammamoth, protect the combos, and go from there. So we're playing Wind Nexus. So that's 3 Toxic Swarm. 2 Exaltair. Wind is pretty good at toolboxing, so 2 is fine. And generally you only ever need Exaltair to end a game. Playing Exaltair early, while putting a lot of pressure on your opponent, doesn't always significantly get you ahead. 1 MSL, because we're trying to play a little bit aggressive. We don't necessarily need the wind healing, but it's nice to have a healer that we can search with Aeolus. 2 Findust, because Findust searches Aeolus and Tower of the Winds, as well as we're playing a Nexus deck, so the ability to Nexus onto Findust and disenchant it on the same turn, to then go find Tower of the Winds, to then Tower of the Winds off Aeolus onto Findust, to get to Flammamoth. It's nice little kind of combo synergies that I like with this card, so we do run 2 Pegas to pop back row. It's just a nice early play, and if you go Pegas, Tower of the Winds onto a Pegas, you can pop 2 runes in the same turn, and then drop the big boy Flammamoth. Pretty powerful that way. 2 Sorlet, because Sorlet's just the best wind attacker. We don't have any splash attackers because our spirit deck is pretty... I mean, we could run less wind for sure, but the deck is pretty expensive on wind, so we do want a lot of it. So we don't have anything like Eddie and stuff like that in this deck build. 3 Aeolus, because we want to find it, and we're not running Elechick. You can fit Elechick in this deck. Your mileage may vary. We only ever really need to find 1 Aeolus, because 1 Aeolus will get us most of what we need. 2 Tower of the Winds. It's searchable for Findust, so in theory you could probably run less Tower of the Winds, because you can go Aeolus, search Findust, play Findust Nexus to it or something, or keep it alive for a turn, get Tower, or just disenchant Findust right away. Basically, Aeolus, Tower of the Winds, and Findust kind of create this little 3-point combo where you get one, you get all of them. That's why we're running just 2 Tower of the Winds, but you could probably cut it down to 1, because we want Findust to get Aeolus to get something else, or Aeolus to get Findust to get Tower, so on and so forth. 3 Altar of the Stars, because we're playing a Nexus deck, and it's the best Nexus card in the game by a lot. Altar of the Stars is just really powerful. 2 Circle the Skies, because there's a lot of things we can actually do with Circle the Skies. So obviously you can go on Toxian or Pegas to get some more threat more damage, stuff like that. Or, again, we play Aeolus on, let's say, 4, search Findus, cast Circle of the Sky, circle 1 from Aeolus to Findus, disenchant Findus, find Tower of the Winds, ascend, and it draws us a card as well. So it's a nice little enabler for a lot of the little micro synergies in this deck. This deck really does revolve around Aeolus, find Findus Nexus, Findus disenchant, find Tower of the Winds, go to Flammamoth. That's what the deck is doing. And then we just happen to have the kind of Nexus ending core with Exaltair, Toxworm, and all that jazz. So pretty heavy on the Nexus cards. 3 Ambrosia, because why would you go without it? 1 Rise from the Ashes, so that Dymax can say he proved a point and he's correct. Rise from the Ashes is going towards his deck because I like the card. Sure. 1 Resting on your Laurels. We generally don't need removal if we're dropping a Flammamoth in 1 turn on board. That's going to get over anything our opponent plays, but it's nice to have at least 1 removal option without splashing elements here because our elements are a little tight with the deck. 3 Gorgon's Gazes and 2 Shield of Achilles. This could be PTA, this could be Shield of Achilles. I'm just thinking with Shield of Achilles, I think it's better than PTA because forcing our opponent to keep spending spirits on the same Celestial might be good, or I really don't know. It's just, I threw 2 Shields of Achilles is what I had, I guess. But PTA, Shield of Achilles, both are good. Shield at least protects our little guys better than PTA does. 5 Pyro, because this will get us generally a Flammamoth and 2 activations. If you can't win in 2 activations, something's going really wrong. That's basically 2 turns worth of negates, and it's stopping your opponent from using removal. They no longer have that removal. 2 negates is more than enough, and you can always Ambrosia back for more. 2 Zaptors, it's all you really need for the Ash Rabbits, because we're not really doing much with the Ash Rabbits. The deck is super consistent in terms of getting pieces that we need, so we don't really need a ton of Rabbits. I don't know. It's just 2 Zaptors, it feels fine. And 13 Wind. Again, we could probably cut some Wind to splash some other cards, like maybe Eddie, maybe Elechick, stuff like that. But the deck really burns through a lot of Wind really fast with all the kind of stuff it's doing, because it's kind of what Wind does. You play an Aeolus, Nexus, a bunch of spirits on board, blow stuff up, and pray. So I'm going to show you guys a game I have with this deck. I played quite a few games, but I'm only going to show you one because I think it kind of encapsulates the entirety of what Flammamoth is trying to do and where the flaws and benefits are of this specific deck build. So I'll see you guys after the match. Enjoy that.
Subscribe to Words.
Subscribe to Words.
Subscribe to Words, bro.
It's literally just us telling people to subscribe to Words. No!
Alright, so I'm going to go first here, starting with an Ash Rabbit in defense. Obviously, let me look at the top 3 cards of my deck. I'll set 3 cards and pass to my opponent. My opponent goes, hey, I like your play so much, I'll do it again. Or I'll do it as well, I should say. He's going to play his own Ash Rabbit in defense, and then set 2 and pass back to me. Nothing out of the ordinary here. I don't know what my opponent's deck's on yet, but cool. Mirror match. I'm going to play Toxworm. Gets me a chip damage here. Chip damage is going to be incredibly important because, again, our win con as Flammamoth isn't really necessarily a win con. So they're going to play another Rabbit defense. They're building up their walls. And this is where I can start going for a little bit of a combo shenanigan. So I play Aeolus here to go find a Findus. That Findus is going to now find me a Tower of the Winds. And then I can ascend to Flammamoth if I had a Flammamoth in my hand, which unfortunately I actually don't in this situation. So I'm actually going to just dig for it, figuring let me just see if I can find it as early as possible. And we go for a Circle of the Sky off Aeolus for 1 to Findus to draw a card, and I happen to draw the Flammamoth off that Circle of the Sky draw, which basically says, okay, cool, now go Findus effect, find Tower of the Winds, which if that wasn't a Flammamoth off top deck, I probably would have found like another Aeolus to set up for future Aeolus Findus tech turn, or just disenchant Findus the next turn to find another combo piece and just then my deck that way. But I did get to the Flammamoth. It'll burn for 1 by nexting to this Toxiswarm, and then ascending into Flammamoth. And now I can start attacking into, well, a bunch of defensive Elestrals, which is part of the reason why Flammamoth is a little bit, well, a lot of it not great. I can't do damage in this circumstance right now. My opponent's going to keep playing defensive Elestrals, dealing with my board, like P-Gus popping back row, he gets a shield here. And my Flammamoth is just going to punch into defense Elestrals, do no damage, punch into another defense Celestial, do no damage, punch into another defense Celestial, ad nauseum until my opponent finds a way to deal with Flammamoth. I'm going to play a Findus here to find Aeolus, because now that I have second Aeolus, I can start finding Wind Nexus cards to try to burn my opponent out through all this back row and other shenanigans going on, but that did eat my normal cast. So when I play, or rather when I play my Aeolus and then search my Toxic Swarm here, I won't be able to play Toxic Swarm until the following turn, but I will set an Altar of the Stars here to get ready to start punching in for damage, because I can use Altar to shift things to attack position and start swinging over things on my next turn. So I set the Altar, pass back to my opponent, or rather attack over my opponent's P-Gust, and then pass to my opponent. Now this is where the alarm bells goes off, because I see Small Tuga, and I'm thinking P-Gust Astrabbit was going to be basically a Voltempest or something, but it is a Kinleo, which is problematic because Kinleo is an Elestral effect that will destroy my Flammamoth as long as he has Nexus. I play my Toxic Swarm, burn for 1, I go to Altar here, my opponent goes, no, 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 I have a Chains of Prometheus. To which I go, cool, I'll negate your negate with my negate of Flammamoth. So I use Flammamoth effect here, negate the Chains of Prometheus, allow my Altar to still go and resolve, so I can start punching in for some damage. However, I choose to attack over the Small Tuga with my Toxic Swarm to do 1 damage, but I don't attack with my Flammamoth because I'm expecting a shield. So I already used Flammamoth to negate for the turn. If I use Flammamoth to attack here, I could get bounced, which yes would set my opponent back lots of spirits, but I'm just thinking, well, they have no fire on board yet. I can negate whatever they have for runes, and they go Hephaestus. I'm like, cool, I'll pop the Hephaestus, and then I forget to tell my opponent that I'm going to activate Moth to pop Hephaestus, so I'm like, alright, I misplayed here, right? But then I realized after they used this Nexus here and they popped my Flammamoth, which again was a misplay, I could have destroyed Hephaestus on cast. They had Volcanic Forge in hand anyway, they got rid of my Flammamoth no matter what this turn. Though the misplay does cost me a Toxic Swarm and an extra Spirit when the Kinleo runs over now the Toxic Swarm. So that was a misplay here, but it honestly probably wouldn't have mattered with the rest of the things going on, because I'm going to go Sorlet here to try to out this Kinleo and find out that that shield that I was not attacking into with Flammamoth when its effect was down was an actual shield of Achilles. So I'm kind of just SOL everywhere in this matchup at this point. And then he's going to just send this Kinleo into actually a fun little card from Moonrise that he proxied, which is it's the effect is basically just expend a Wind Spirit to bounce a card on board, and he punches me for game there. Interesting little finish. We're both kind of playing a weird wind fire deck. Alright, so yes, only 1 game today. I did play quite a few games with this deck, and I won maybe like half of them. The games I won were not off the back of Flammamoth, so that's why I showed you this game that I lost with. Now, Flammamoth as a card is significantly powerful. The problem is Flammamoth does not on its own win you a game because of what you saw in this game. Your opponent can just go defensive Elestral, answer something else, defensive Elestral, answer something else. I'm not taking damage here. I'm okay losing a little bit of spirits here. Even if they go like, okay, I'm going to negate your chains there or negate your earthquake, you're going equal on spirits and you're still burning your opponent out or getting burnt by your opponent when you negate something, and that is pretty detrimental to your spirit deck and your overall life total when you spend so many spirits to get Flammamoth out in the first place. So you can kind of either play a deck that has Flammamoth in it as a surprise, like, hey, I'm playing Wind Nexus, oh cool, let me just ascend over my Wind Nexus Elestrals that are already in play into Flammamoth, or you go all in on Flammamoth. Both of those decks kind of have the flaw of, well, one is hard to get Flammamoth out as the side piece to win Nexus stuff because you're getting rid of your Nexus and receivers to get to Flammamoth. The other side of it is you're playing Flammamoth with a win con and win Nexus behind it, which makes the win Nexus stuff a little less reliable because you have all these pieces in it to get Flammamoth out. It's kind of a catch-22 of a deck. While I do like Flammamoth, if we had ways to search it in the future, maybe we can play something a little bit more consistent where we run this like micro Findust Nexus package where we go Findust ascend over something to find Aeolus, or Findust ascend over something to find Tower of the Winds to get to Flammamoth. If we can search Flammamoth at a decent speed, then Flammamoth might be a little bit more in the picture as a card that supports a wind strategy that can win a game. That's my thoughts here. Flammamoth is a good card. Any deck that you build with Flammamoth in it is a bad deck because you're just conceding too much one way or the other to actually winning a game. That's my thoughts on the win stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. All again, 1 game this time, but I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to see more Flammamoth, check out Dymax's and MBT's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.